podcast.
Oh, 1 second. What episode are we on?
Episode 30,000,005.
Episode 30,000,005.
I stole my housemate's mug for this. I'm sorry, Jack, if you're watching. I couldn't find a clean mug of my own, so I took yours.
What are we talking about?
Podcast.
What are we talking about in the podcast? I need it for the title.
I don't think we know yet. I've put
Podcast stuff. I want to talk about, just because I want to laugh about it, I want to talk about fucking how insecure Ninja is. No, I don't want to talk about Basmati rice. I want to talk about how insecure Ninja is.
No, to be fair. So where did that come from then? How was that? Because I didn't hear about that until you actually told me.
I'm not live yet, I don't think. I'm still trying to think of the title here.
I just put podcast 850000 episode 30,000,005.
001.
Idiot.
But you know
right, I'm saying that we're talking about the goat thing, so I'm going to bring
Is
it
it
up at some point.
850001?
Yes, that's the
Oh,
joke.
that's me. Oh, okay, that's fine. Typical Tistic missing the joke.
Yeah, no worries.
Right, there we go.
Right, are you actually live? Are you live now?
I think so. Yes, I am
Hey.
live. Hello, Zero
Hey.
viewers. Let me quickly post on Instagram.
Okay, right, cool. So whilst Casper does that, Millie, do you have any comments on how insecure Ninja is?
Honestly, dude, I had this one guy actually who he was just the mentality of he dead ass had the audacity to say to me, listen, we can fuck around, but just don't fall in love with me. Girls always fall in love with me. And I'm like,
okay, ew, yeah.
What do you mean? Like, I was like, first of all, I'll fall in love with whoever the fuck I want. And like, quite frankly, it's none of your business if I do. And secondly, bold of you to presume, sir, that actually you'll be the lucky one. Do you know what I mean? I think it's that whole mentality of like, there's a difference between confidence and just straight up
narcissism.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? And I think it's glorified in a sense. I think a lot of the time it's found with, and this might come out really badly, but like more traditional people. So the whole idea of like the 60s housewife where they want to go provide for a wife and they want a wifey. And
so the straight white monogamous people.
Literally. I wonder
like
why that's an issue. They're never an issue.
Yeah, and I'm just like, wait, sorry, for people who don't know what we're talking about, the Ninja thing is that Ninja came out recently and was just like, I don't want to play one-on-one with female streamers to avoid accusations of flirting. And he's quoted...
Well, he's married. Like,
yeah, but like, how insecure in yourself and your relationship do you have to be to think that that playing a video game with a woman one-on-one affects anything?
Is he okay? Like,
hold on, let me get this quote for him. Yeah, here we go. This is a quote from Ninja, right? I still stand by not having alone time with a woman in general if you're a married man.
Is he okay? Like, genuinely.
Like, what the fuck, dude?
Does he think that...
No, I think my parents are quite the same, actually. I remember having a conversation about this when I was having issues with my ex-boyfriend, and she was saying, and my stepdad was saying as well, how it's not a case of she's stopping him having friends. It's a case of they don't feel the need to spend other time with people. I think if they've got kids, like, do you know what I mean? They spend all of their time with their kids, spend time with each other. If they want time alone,
but that's different though. It's like they don't feel the need because they've got a whole other life outside of it. But
definitely, but they think it's inappropriate for, even for example, my mum to have a really close male friend that isn't a relative, and it's never
dumb.
really. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's definitely a generational thing. And I think
let me just Google how old Ninja is.
Ninja's our generation, though, isn't he?
He is, but at the same time.
Oh, wait. Ninja. How old is Ninja? 29. So Ninja is only 4 years older than me.
Yeah, so it's not mind you, that I guess that is a kind of a generational thing, and it all depends on how you raised with the generation that's before you. But you think like the guy's a fucking millionaire. You'd think he'd be a bit more secure in himself,
exactly.
you know?
No,
I just find Ninja a bit odd.
Anyway, Millie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I found out today. I did a quick Google search because my sister's just turned 16.
Right.
And we were talking about. I was like, "Oh, are you millennial?" I was like, "Wait, are you a millennial?" I googled it. Apparently, a millennial is anyone born between 1986 and 2004. So technically, both me and my sister are in the same generation. But technically, from I think it's 1999 to like 2015. Or 2002 to 2015, I think, is Gen Z. So she's technically both. And I was like, that can't be right.
Strange.
What?
Yeah, no. Can we fact check that? Because I haven't had a chance.
Let me Google.
I'm looking on Wikipedia, the most reliable source of information.
Gen Z. Gen Z is
1981 to 1996.
Born between 1997 and 2012.
Wait.
So I'm not.
I'm Gen Z then. I am Gen Z. I'm Gen Z. Casper's Gen Y.
Gen is 1995.
That's millennial.
I am Gen Z, but I've just seen something saying that I'm not Gen Z.
One sec, I'm gonna get my Streamlabs up just to show this, just to show what I'm looking at. This
every Google is contradicting itself. So
I know, and this is where I was confused.
Don't believe anything anymore.
So yeah, we've got silent generation, baby boomers, etc. Then there's Gen X, and then Gen Y is Casper, which is millennials, and then 1997. That's me and you, Millie, right? You're 1999, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm 98. So we're Gen Z. We're just on that cusp of generational difference. Have you ever felt that, Millie, the generational difference? Yeah. Because we're too old for things like early iPhones and things like that, but we're too young for the most recent.
I think there's definitely a gap. So I find sometimes, for example, the whole TikTok generation, 13, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, look at what's her name, Charli
D'Amelio.
Oh my goodness, there's a whole load of stuff about her as well. But I think I relate to stuff like that. I can still get down with the kids, and maybe I can't, and I'm just saying that, but I still feel that. But saying that, I think it's to do with being home educated as well. I never really hung out with kids my age. I always hung out with people who were older or younger, people my age.
Yeah, me too.
I never date my age. People my age, or young, between 18 and 22, I just can't relate to people 90% of the time. The people I met in uni, it's a little different because they're a different kind of, I feel like people who go to uni are a different kind of people. And I think when I went to uni, I adapted to that. But definitely, growing up, home ed. So I went to this group when I started doing home ed when I was 11. I think I started this group, it's called New Leaf, and it was based in a town across from my town. And there was kids that were so I was 11, 12. There were kids that were 18, 19 that were there that were home educated, 14, 15, all the way down to newborns, and it was such a cool environment because the age wasn't really a thing. No one really considered, it wasn't as if the 8-year-olds hung out together. It was the 14-year-old and the 7-year-old played Yu-Gi-Oh together. And it's it's stereotypical, but it was such a good atmosphere. So I never really I don't know. I never really had that divide so much.
I've felt it in certain things, like Pokemon's. I think my biggest example of I never got into it, and it's something that people a couple of years older than me were really, really into, and I felt like I related to those people more. But then I didn't like the things they liked because I didn't get it. I couldn't relate to it.
It's I feel a massive 1 second, I'm just gonna close my bedroom door.
I feel a massive.
I didn't think about that. I feel a bit of a I've just started university this year and I'm 25.
Yeah.
And everyone around me is 18, 19. Like, the majority of people are like 18, 19. And I never really felt old until I spoke to them about movies and, like, small things that don't really matter. Like, TV shows, or like what sort of TV shows you watch when you're growing up. Like, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have a large gap between me and all of my friends, pretty much, because all of my friends are either in their early 20s. Well, I'm in my mid 20s, so all of my friends are either in their early 20s, or late 20s, early 30s. Like, I have like 2 friends my age, I think, maybe 3, not many at all.
I looked online as well. Sorry, just before I forget. Have you got siblings, Casper?
No.
I think I've just looked online. Ninja has got 2 brothers, but they're both quite a bit older than him. Right. And I think that plays a part as well, because I went for years and years and years, because I've obviously got like all of my brothers and my sister.
Yeah.
I had 4 years older, 5 years older, 4 years younger, 5 years younger. Mm-hmm. And I think I flipped and changed based on who I was arguing with when we were growing up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you think that affected it at all, Casper? Like what you chose to like expose yourself to?
Possibly, because I didn't have anybody younger than me to, like, I didn't have younger siblings, so I wasn't watching stuff on children's TV shows when I was a teenager, for example.
Yeah.
Like, someone with a 16, 17-year-old sibling would. Like, I don't know. I just, occasionally, I feel really, really old.
Yeah.
And I'm not. Like, 25
No, exactly.
25 is still very young. I have my entire life ahead of me. I don't need to know what I'm doing yet.
No, exactly.
And, but the odd day, I just feel ancient, because I'll mention something about something I watched on TV when I was a kid, and everybody looks at me like, what the fuck?
I've definitely done that.
No, definitely. I remember the day my sister called me a boomer, and that, quite frankly, was a low point.
Yeah, like, I have been called a boomer by my younger friends, because I've always had friends a lot younger than me.
Yeah.
And I think the internet made that more of a thing. Like, I met one of my friends when he was 14, and he's 18 now, so, and I was 21.
Yeah.
And we were friends, and that age gap might sound weird, like, but because it was over the internet, like, it doesn't matter on the age gap, because we met in a space that both teenagers and adults coexist and talk about the same things. And we met in that way, but had we have met at like a youth group or any other environment, people would have been like, oh, that's a bit weird. But
and it would have changed how you interact with each other.
But, like, because we met on the internet, and I initially met him thinking he was a lot older than 14. Like, we just, and we've been friends ever since.
How old did you say you were when you met him?
20, I would have been 20, no, I would have been 19, it was just, it was when I'd just come out as trans, so I would have been 19, and he was 14.
Oh, fair enough.
And, God, I'm old.
Yeah, no.
Like, it's when I say things like that, it's like, oh, I'm ancient compared to everybody in my life.
I think it's different as well. I think, I want to say, like, I had freedom when I was growing up. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't as if I was, like, locked in. I spent a lot of my time grounded. I didn't really have a lot of friends growing up.
Yeah.
I found it difficult, especially when I was home educated. But the friends I did make through that, I have this one friend who we're going to call Nathan. We're just going to call him Nathan.
Yeah, sure, Nathan.
Nathan's a bit older than me, and I think Nathan had a thing for me. And we're not going to go into that because it's a bit weird. But I think what I found attractive about exclusively hanging out with older people is, as well as the fact that they were generally more mature, it was stuff like, he learned to drive when I was like 14. So we'd go around in his car, he had his own freedom with his house, his mum would like let him do what he wanted, because he was older, do you know what I mean? Like by the time I was in his he was 18, 19. I think he
Yeah.
might have been even older than that. And I think that's what attracted me as well. That sort of, obviously my mum kept things quite regulated. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, like, I needed it given like the circumstances I was in. But I think that's another thing as well, is that sort of wishing to be older.
Yeah, like
definitely.
I was like that when I was 16, 17. Like when I was a teenager, I went stereotypical off the rails, like drinking in fields at like 4 a.m. And I'd lie to my parents and tell them that I was somewhere else and somewhere safe. And thinking back on it, that is horrible. Like if I had a child and they did that, I would be fuming
It's
at them.
scary, isn't it?
Because
you don't want to...
Because it's very unsafe, and like the states that we were getting in, and like we had to phone ambulances for each other. Like luckily never for me.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there.
You got some dickhead running across the house, being like, she needs some bread. She needs some bread. Get some Hovis.
Yeah, like thinking back on it, we were 16, and that wasn't safe. And but the generation below us didn't have that experience from the people that I know.
When you say below, do you mean younger than us or older than us?
I mean younger than us.
Yeah.
Like, younger than us don't really have that same sort of experience because it is more unsafe now.
I think
parents
they're
are more
still
tuned
the
into
same.
it.
No, I think they're still the same.
I think the difference is a lot of the younger generation. I say the younger generation. I'm going to use the example of my sister. I know it's a bad example because she's home educated. She doesn't really see a lot of people anyway. But the amount of online friends she has, like I think, especially like I really want to do. I'm looking at going back to uni to do psychology, and I really want to do like an investigation into the long-term like psychological effect of the lockdown on kids. Because you look at people on the internet,
it's going to be really weird.
Up till 5 a.m. playing with their mates. Do you know what I mean? And that's
or they're staying up getting drunk at home alone, which can be worse.
And I really want to look at like, especially like, so for example, I've got a niece and she's turning 1 in April. She was a lockdown baby, and like, she's obviously got her family. She's got a couple of older siblings, and like, she sees her family occasionally. But like, that whole generation of babies, if this lockdown goes on for like an extended, like I'm talking years now, can you imagine what that's going to do to people? I already don't like going near people on the bus. I don't like being crowded. These kids, I don't know, man.
I'm just gonna not want to like, be out at all.
Think
which
it'll,
I can relate to, honestly.
I
think it'll mess up the ones that are in lower school now, like infant age.
Because
because you're taught to share, you're taught to hug your friends if they fall over, and you're taught to
kind people say sorry.
You're taught to be you're taught to be physical with each other at that age, and there will be a whole generation that have to unlearn that behavior they've only just learned.
Well, you look at it. I'm now. Well, like I know it doesn't. So, for example, a year's a long time, right? But as you get older, a year becomes a shorter and shorter period of your life. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're 3, by the time you're 4, your life is completely different. And I think this year alone, like that is a big long time for a kid. That's like, for example, that's her entire life in lockdown. And I know it doesn't sound. She's still a baby. Do you know what I mean? Things have time to change. But like, there's gonna be kids who. Like, have you seen, WALL-E?
As in, where's Wally?
No, as in, like, Wally, Eva.
Oh, yeah.
The little robot thing.
All the people that are, like, obese in these chairs and, like, don't go near each other, and it's, like, a, like, whole... I'm pretty sure, I might be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure it's an aspect of the film where, like, they just don't touch each other. And they, after the end of the film...
They don't for most of it,
Yeah, and they have this whole revelation where they're, like, we can hold hands, we can, like... like hug, and like I think, as much as that sounds really like stupid, I reckon it's definitely something that like sort of foreshadowing. Do you know what I mean? And I'm really like, especially like
WALL-E was like way ahead of its time, and we watched it at the start of lockdown. I'm pretty sure.
I think so. Yeah.
And I hadn't seen it before because again I was too old for it when it came out. Really.
Yeah.
and I just kind of missed it. And watching it, it was very ahead of its time. Like what? It was really, really strange but cute, and the little square robot was nice.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, it's
So-
it's just a prediction of the future, really, isn't it?
Well, I hope not. I'd
So,
like to have
on
more
the
faith.
subject of the future,
I hadn't
Um,
finished talking about the thing that we were just talking about, actually.
okay, continue,
just,
and then
yeah,
I'll say.
I was just saying, going back to what you were saying earlier, Millie, on the 1-year-old being a
Yeah,
lockdown baby. I think there's the potential for people who are in school now, because like if you think about the experiences you had in high school, as horrific as they might have been, they kind of shaped who you knew.
Oh,
Like,
definitely.
I know you, and I know Tom, and I know a couple of other people from my high
Yeah.
school who are like lifelong friends. Like, Tom's my best friend. So, I just thinking about those people who are having their school messed around with right now, that won't be able to form those kind of relationships or those kind of bonds.
I was just thinking as well. There's this whole thing. I remember my friend was telling me, like, you know, the whole thing about like your gran over salting food.
Yeah.
That whole stereotype, because of the war, man. Like, that's still having a
Yeah.
that had rations, and like, I think it's similar to, so for example, as a kid, I wasn't really allowed chocolate and stuff like that. I was, but it was more of a treat. And I think when I got older and I started having more autonomy over my diet,
Yeah.
I was just like chocolate, sugar,
Yeah,
everything.
fuck it.
Yeah,
fuck
I
yeah.
still am, and I'm
No,
25.
exactly. But you can always tell the difference between kids who grew up with that sort of like leeway and kids who, and it's similar with the salt thing. As far as I understand, the whole salt thing is
Yeah.
because they couldn't get it. Do you know what I mean? So
So-
now,
And
What-
and I think we will be like that when we are grandparents. Like we,
definitely.
like our generation, will probably be like that with our grandkids, because we have had to have. Yeah, it's not very long, hopefully.
So do you think the generation that's in high school now, like the say 15, 16-year-olds, when you get to around 18, 19, obviously some people start earlier, which is very unsafe, but around 18, 19 is when young adults tend to do a lot of drinking and a lot of drugs, and tend to experiment with that whole phase. That tends to be the time, right? So do you think the people who are sort of 15, 16, 17 now, who are either coming out of high school or just, on the cusp of leaving high school or whatever, do you think, because of the salt thing, right, do you think that they will regress and go into themselves and rather and not spend time with other people even more than before? Or do you think, because of the whole, like, as you say, with the salt thing and not having that, do you think like there will be a massive boom in drugs and drinking and partying when all this is over from that generation, because they couldn't do it before?
I think from experience, so I was working in a pub in London for about 2 years. And obviously I worked all through the lockdown. So I was working, so the March they shut. I was working up until December, just gone.
Yeah.
So I saw the whole progression of the lockdown. Like, obviously the pubs were shutting on and off. And there was a big thing about kids who turned 18 at the very start of the lockdown. So March, I know there was one person, I can't remember who they were, but someone I'm like friends with. They turned 18 the night the pub shut at like 9 o'clock.
Oh no.
But then when the pubs reopened, that was when kids were disregarding social distancing. They were getting
Yeah.
Yeah.
the rules. And I think it depends. I think anyone that hadn't already started drinking or was just about to start going into that whole thing where all their mates were going out and they were trying to get into clubs and stuff, I think younger than that, it's going to be an aversion, but after that, it's going to kind of be the salt thing.
Yeah.
I think it could go either way, because you've got the ones that are gonna want to go out and drink and be with their friends straight away, and then you've got the ones like me who have social anxiety around meeting people anyway,
Mm.
who will go in on themselves and like not do that. Like I think that I'm lucky that I'm 25 now, because if this had happened even 5 years ago, I wouldn't leave my house ever, because I'm not anymore, but before I finished puberty and properly learned who I am and came out as trans and stuff, I was that sort of person that read the news and like it sunk in with me, and I would lie awake worrying about things that a teenager shouldn't have to worry about. And I think that a lot, especially the younger generation, like the ones that are 12, 13, just going into high school, like they've all been exposed to this very adult thing and this very adult language that they shouldn't have to be exposed to at that age.
And the numbers so high when it comes to deaths and cases that are beyond even comprehension for adults.
There's already been a raise in referrals to CAMHS and teenage mental health places because of the anxiety they're seeing how many people have died on the news every day. Like when that generation are a little bit older, I'm quite interested to see what those guys are like. Like when this stops. I hope that they get the help they need and people start taking children's mental health seriously. It's unfortunate that it's taken a pandemic and it's taken them having to see that thousands of people are dying every day on the news for their mental health to be taken seriously. But I hope that generations below us don't have to experience the same sort of things that we did. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like mental health and stuff, I think a lot of people get forgotten. So if, for example, like there's like, I want to say there's like a couple of groups of people that are so mentally vulnerable that just weren't considered. And I know it's not a lot they can do. Like the lockdown, it was seen as necessary. They thought they were doing the best what they could. But you look at like the older generation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for example, if my nan was still alive, she would be horrified right now. She would hate not being able to see the kids, see the grandkids. That was her whole thing. Like, especially people the partners of people who have died like in hospital during this time, and they're older, and their husbands have died, and now they're stuck at home alone, and as well, kids with autism.
And also, I just want to say, like, it doesn't even have to be that old as in the older generation. It can be millennials who turned 25 during the pandemic, because I don't know about the rest of the world, but I know for a fact that once you turn 25 in the UK, mental health services are a lot harder to come by. Like, really hard to come by.
I think it's lower than 25. I would say it's 18. And that's as someone who has only tried to access mental health support as an adult. Like, as a child, yes, it's amazing that children's mental health is given a lot more funding than it has been in the past. But it's very easy to get a referral to CAMHS. If you want a referral to CAMHS when you're 12, 13, even 14, you go to CAMHS with your mum and dad and they're like, yeah, this child wants a referral to CAMHS. They want a counsellor. And then at CAMHS, they'll put you through all of the assessment criteria and you'll be diagnosed with whatever it is, or you won't be. With adults' mental health, I am an adult with mental health problems, and I have found that it's really bloody difficult to get help. Like, I went to the doctor when I moved to Brighton, and it took 6 appointments for me to be referred to a mental health clinic, because And then I got there, and I was told you can't be mentally ill. You have autism, which is incorrect. I'm complaining and blah blah blah. I'm not going to say much because it might have to go to court. And it's very difficult to get help. Like my GP said to me, the only way you can have help is if you pay for it. And
Right.
and I'm very, very lucky that I've got grandparents who understand my mental health problems and understand that if I ask for money for counselling, I bloody need it. Like, and I'm very lucky that I am in a position that I have family that I can ask for that. There's thousands of people in the UK and the world who don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And this pandemic is bringing it out because 27% of students since the start of the lockdown have reported a mental health issue.
I mean, I'm not in uni anymore, but I'm quite associated, and the effects on uni students, like I'm surrounded by them, like all of my closest friends, like obviously still live in the area that I went to uni. It's awful, man, and they don't consider it.
Like it's horrible. Like GCSEs have been cancelled, A levels have been cancelled, and I'm still expected to write an essay. I'm expected to film a film on my own in my bedroom without any of the studio equipment that my uni have, and get the same grade that I would get if I was in their studios.
Exactly.
Like, it's ridiculous, and it's all because the government are money hungry.
It's the guidelines and the rules and the guidelines for things like mental health support and uni grading haven't, like, they are still pre-COVID. Nothing's really been updated for COVID. So everyone is working with pre-COVID rules during a time where there's a pandemic, and it's not working.
And I don't have, actually. I think my mate was to Birmingham University. I know the one I went to did basically nothing. There was a whole thing, but the guy, the president of the uni or whatever it is, he's a dickhead anyway. He's a misogynist and like all this kind of stuff. But I know Birmingham University. My friend, as far as I understand, they said, if you get, so for example, you go on your expected grade, or your average grade. If you go above, you still get the mark, but if you go below, it bumps up to your average anyway. I thought that was so good.
like I think they need to change the guidelines. They need to lower the grade margins because we won't get, well, I won't, as a creative student, won't get nearly the same grade as I would get if I was using uni's equipment, their cameras, their filming areas, their actors. Like,
and personally, I feel, sorry to interrupt you, Casper, but it does build on what you're saying. I feel like you give a university or the university system, the education system, or you at least borrow from the government to give to them. You give them $9,000 a year, right? It's a lot of money still, though. You know. It's a lot of money. These unis get a lot of money, and like, hear me out with this one because I'm going somewhere. I know that there could be issues with this, but I'm going with somewhere with this.
Do it, man.
Right? You get all of this fucking money every single year, and you have done for years, putting a ton of people in debt across the entire country and the world in places. Right? So, what if you actually took that money that you don't need to spend on anything because no one's using your buildings because there's a global pandemic on and they can't go anywhere, and you just gave it back?
Yeah.
You know? What if you just gave it back and allowed these students to take a year off because we are in an unprecedented situation where they can't get the grades they need and they can't do the things they need to do? So give them the year off, give them the money back so they can live during that year, so they're not paying you for a fucking streaming service.
But there is,
And
there is
then
issues
you
with that,
then
though.
then you go the next time. I know there's budgeting issues and stuff
And there's
and all that shit,
people
but it's
living
still
in
where is this money going? Because it's not going on
Like-
keeping the buildings maintained or anything. Because they don't need to. Because no one's fucking there. Where is it going? What is happening
I think,
with all of
I
these funds?
think it goes for paying the lecturers.
This is what I was going to say. If anything,
And with my uni anyway, it goes on equipment and like up to date programs and cameras and stuff because they change every year.
Yeah.
But you still
And-
wouldn't need these things to be paid out if during this time, because you can't use this stuff effectively right
Yeah.
now anyway.
Like, I don't understand why they're still expecting us to film a bloody music video
What I will say-
alone in my bedroom. Like,
what I will say is that so for example, I decided I was going to take a year out. So some
Yeah.
things went wrong in my second year. I decided to take a year out, and then COVID hit. So I've not gone back. I don't think I'm going to go back, to be honest, because I want to change what I'm doing anyway. But
Mhm.
the whole year out thing, what I find is I know a couple people who did do that just anyway, despite the pandemic, and to get back into education and to get back into that academic mindset, because it is an academic mindset, it's completely different to day to day. Once I'd spent a year working, the thought of going back and writing a 20,000 word essay is just horrible. Do you know what I mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're doing because I am
And-
someone who's currently trying to get back into education. And the thought of it disgusts me. I have my
and that's
planner for the access course that I'm going to be doing for the next couple of weeks up. It starts on the 6th. It starts in 3 days. I feel physically sick looking at it. I don't want to do this. I fucking hate it, and I just want to die whenever I think about it. It's not something I want to do.
and that's why I didn't want to defer. Like, a lot of people in my year have deferred and have said, "Oh, we'll do it this next year." But for me, like, this year was I either do it or I do something else with my life entirely. Like, cause I know that if I had deferred, I just wouldn't I just wouldn't have gone to uni full stop because that's just the sort of person I am, I think.
I definitely. I saw something though on the topic of like funding and stuff. I saw a post that was saying I can't remember the exact figures, but there was a post comparing university fees to Open University.
Yeah, Open University is 2,500
Exactly.
for an entire year, and actual uni, mine anyway, is 9,250. I think.
I reckon they should give
For
a
a
discount
year.
on the year.
And
Pay the lecturers more, man. 'Cause
Yeah.
The lecturers,
Yeah.
like, they're absolute heroes.
it's like they get paid next to nothing.
Exactly.
Like they striked last year because they
Yeah.
weren't getting paid enough.
I remember there was strikes
And
when I was going through uni, but to be fair, I know
And-
my lecturers were travelling hours every single day, and they were putting in that effort, and they gave a shit about students before the pandemic. So now for them to have, they've got, like, people are going through financial issues, they got people dying that they know, they've got a lot of stress, they're isolating as well, and like, to be fair,
and they're homeschooling their kids as well. A lot of them.
On top of
Exactly.
it all, yeah.
exactly. So I think they're the sort of unseen heroes a lot of the time. I think
Yeah.
teachers in general. I offered a job to do training teaching. Literally, I had my interview the day before all the school shut.
Yeah.
I got
Wow.
the job the day before the school shut. I was meant to be going training, teaching for kids with disabilities in a school in my local areas where I was going to try and go. But that just completely stopped.
And
On hold.
and to bring it back around to stuff that's going on now,
Yeah.
the teachers haven't been offered the vaccine yet.
Yeah.
I've got friends who work in SEN schools,
Yeah.
and I've got a lot of friends who have SEN kids who go to SEN schools,
Yeah.
and the teachers haven't been offered the vaccine.
No,
and
police officers haven't either,
and-
as far as I'm aware.
And I don't understand why teachers aren't classed as vulnerable, because in your standard high school, you have 25 to 35 kids in a class, don't you?
Exactly.
And you have 5 different classes every day.
and those kids are
So
traveling on
that is, I don't know what the maths is, but what's 35 times 5?
35 times 5
is
170.
Yeah, 170 different people you're seeing every day.
Yeah.
No, exactly. I was saying as
And-
well, I was living with a dude who was going to college. So a woman that took me in, her son is 17, and he had to isolate for 2 weeks because not only do you consider there's classroom mixing, these people have got siblings. They're also traveling on buses together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, do you know what I mean? All day, every day, they go on different bus routes. They go and see different kids, different classes, lunch times,
No.
and you have to consider as well. These people, they might have parents who are key workers who are still
Yeah.
doing that. Another exposure. And I'm just like, I love education. I think the education system itself is flawed, and there's a lot of work to be done.
Oh, very flawed,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
the SEN education system.
Giving kids opportunities. So the last thing I want is the schools to shut, but I think why not give support to people to home educate? So for example, when I was home educated, so my mum at the moment, like, she's having a great time. She's giving advice because obviously she's home educated from me downwards. So that's what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all 6 of us. So we've got like a little thing going. But like, it's feasible. Like, I did all my GCSEs through a tutor, and there were a couple times I had to Skype call the tutor because she was quite ill anyway, as far as I remember. So it is feasible. I think there's so many like different facilities that they can be giving to people rather than keeping the schools open.
Yeah.
You've got to think about the social impact of this for the future, though, because we did talk about it before.
Like,
About whether or not they're going to party and what that's going to be like after the fact, and it's like, what's the social impact of seeing everyone's face through a screen, especially for someone who's just entered high school at 13. Your mind's not fully developed, and you're just entering high school, and now you've got to meet with all of your new classmates and all of your new teachers through a video screen. What's that going to do to people? Like, that's kind of worrying.
I think they need to set up more social groups as well. Like, I have a friend in America who home educates. She's got 2 boys, one of whom is autistic, and they go to like groups for autistic kids and like siblings of autistic kids. And recently they've moved on to Zoom, and they do like escape rooms, like online escape rooms together and stuff, like Pokemon themed ones and like stuff like that. And if the schools put a little bit of funding into like a tenner for this class of kids to do a team building exercise like that together, then it wouldn't be perfect. Like, it wouldn't close the social gap, but it would help a little bit.
Like as we started this part of the conversation, my brain just suddenly went, thank fuck for video games. And actually, on what you just said, Casper, like giving schools funding for things, imagine if you could give a school funding for just buy a modified version of a game, because obviously, like, there's some games that if you just brought straight out, then people could cheat them or hack them, or strangers could interfere with kids, and that's not a great place to be. But imagine, right, I know people do this with Minecraft. Actually, there is an education version of Minecraft, but imagine like if you could all sit down as a class and play Fall Guys together over Discord.
Imagine, man.
Yeah.
Like, imagine beating your teacher at Fall Guys. That would be so funny. That would be so cool.
Classist implications. So, for example, I haven't got a laptop. If I was in school right now and I had Zoom, my parents bought me my first laptop when it was secondhand when I was 15.
That's the point.
Exactly. I was the same. I got my first laptop when I was in year 11 for GCSEs.
Although I will say, if you don't have a laptop or some kind of computer right now, then you're not going to be able to be on Zoom with these people in the first place. Exactly. That's a worry. So I'm sure there will have to be some funding somewhere at this time for kids who don't have that.
I think they're handing out iPads to kids that don't have access to computers, because on an iPad, yes, I know Apple aren't the best, but you can do pretty much everything
Yeah.
education-wise that
Yeah.
you can on a computer. Like, I use my iPad for uni. I've used my computer for uni, like, for Zoom lectures once, and that was today.
Yeah.
Like,
I think, just before I forget as well, just because I think it's such an important topic to bring to people as well, is as well as kids who might not socialize as well, I think part of keeping kids in school is, you look at kids who like are victims of like domestic abuse, for example. They're stuck in their house. School is their escape. I've heard of a couple of kids who in school they're safe, and I think that's another thing that needs to be addressed, is domestic abuse.
Yeah.
like
I can't remember the figures for this,
like,
but
there's
when it happened, the rise in domestic domestic
crazy.
violence calls just skyrocketed.
Exactly. That's why they put it in the...
I've been watching 999 What's Your Emergency, which it's like shit TV really. It was a documentary that follows 999 calls and like some episodes of the police and some episodes of the ambulance, and they follow the paramedics and the policemen around with what they go to.
Yeah.
And this latest season has been filmed this year. I think it was last year, sorry. I think it was like March last year it was filmed.
Yeah.
And one of the episodes was about this lady who had fallen out with her friend and was pregnant. And this friend had gone round and kicked in her door.
What?
And
okay.
and the emergency services couldn't enter the home to offer the same sort of comfort and support that they would usually offer a victim of a domestic case like that.
Yeah.
And like, I hadn't thought about that sort of thing because it seems small in the grand scheme of things. But these victims of these crimes that are escalating, and there's a rise of numbers, and like, they're not being given the level of care that they should be, and there's nothing that can be done about that, and that is really, really sad.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
I think it's something that even before COVID, like, first of all, fuck COVID. Second of all, before COVID, it's one of those things that, like, I think majority of people, I can't speak about outside the UK because I've never been outside the UK, but majority of people, it's like a taboo topic. Everyone seems to know someone. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know someone, like, or it's yourself, or like, everyone knows someone, yet it was so untalked about. There was jokes, like, I remember in the pub before COVID, it was sort of like the whole thing about Stella. Do you know what I mean?
The wife beater is in the shirt, the vest.
The vest.
Anyone outside the UK probably won't have a fucking clue what that means.
I'm friends with this guy he grew up in Greece. And we were talking about this actually, and he, like, I sort of explained, like, it's quite morbid, but you know the whole joke about like abortions and like pushing them down the stairs, or like this whole like this whole this dark humor. He just didn't get it.
I don't get it. I think especially going into being non-monogamous myself, I've sort of gotten a bigger respect for, well, myself, you know. So I like, if I was to say jokes about my partner beating me, for example, I couldn't do that. Like that, like, because I have that respect for myself, and I have that respect for other people, where I don't think that saying stuff like that is funny. And I also don't think, like, all of the, like, sorry to bring it back round to straight monogamous white people again, but they are generally culprits. Like, referring to your partner as like the ball and chain, or referring to your partner as
Oh,
something that ties you down or keeps you in prison,
And-
or something that you have to clear stuff with, and things like that. Or even girls in high school, or even not in high
permission.
school, who are going out and they look at other girls wearing like a revealing dress or whatever, and they're like, oh, my boyfriend won't let me wear that. Like,
Exactly.
that
And it's
has
just
been so normalized. It's
and
terrifying.
and
Mhm.
like um 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 as someone who grew up in an abusive household, and everybody knows that about me, so I'm okay to speak
Yeah.
about it on the internet. Like,
Yeah,
I grew up in a very, very abusive household
Yeah.
with I was exposed to that sort of stuff at a young age, and then as a teenager I went on to form abusive relationships myself, and
Yeah.
like become the victim myself, because I had been such a young age and grown up around that. I thought that that was normal,
It's
and
got normalized for you.
and because people joked about it, and like, it wasn't taken seriously, even if I sat someone down and said, this is happening to me, they
Yeah.
would joke about it
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they didn't think I was being serious.
I think is
Like-
there a difference though? Do you find there's a
And-
distinguish? No, personally, Cass, because I had a similar upbringing, which I don't really want to go too much into. But I, for example, will make dark jokes about my past. Do you find that is, what's the word? Like normalizing it, or do you
It's
find
like-
that joking about it and that shouldn't be?
Sort of. Like, for some people, they use humor as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
I do to an extent.
Mm.
But there's certain things I just won't mention. Like,
Yeah.
even jokingly.
Yeah.
Because, like, I don't know. That's just how I cope. I understand that people make jokes to cope with things.
Yeah.
But it's the people who make jokes about the people who make jokes to cope with things
Yeah.
that are the problem. Like, I used to joke about that sort of stuff when I was a teenager because it was mine to joke about.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Exactly. Taking
really?
Yeah,
ownership
just
over
to
but-
throw my perspective in here is it, like, just to add to that last bit you said, it's yours to joke
Yeah.
about. If you are joking about your abuse, your and the things that you've survived and things like that, that's you taking power out of that situation and making it yours and making it your own, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing, no one can take that away from you. But if you were to say, like, I remember PewDiePie got in trouble for making rape jokes back in the day, because that was a normal thing to do on the internet at the time.
exactly.
And I didn't understand why he was apologizing at the time as a teenager. I definitely do now, because that's not your thing to joke about.
No,
If a survivor of sexual assault wants to make a joke about that and own that for themselves, which I know there are some people who have survived sexual assault do use that to cope with it, and that's all the power to them. But you can't make a joke about that as someone who hasn't did that, because that's not your thing to joke about. That doesn't belong to
and-
you.
Oh, just so you
Um,
know, if my internet cuts out,
um,
I'll come straight back. But it's my
Okay.
phone internet's just cut off, so it might be the cat's knocked over the router.
Oh
Okay.
dear. Okay.
And I think that when other people start joking about it and speaking over the people who are trying
Mm-hmm.
to speak about these issues and bring them to people's attention because they're important, and domestic abuse is a very taboo subject, to the point I grew up in a domestically abusive household and didn't mention it to anyone until I turned 16 because I was told it was something to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
Like, and in a way, COVID could be a change in that sort of attitude. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
here
with the
on
amount
out,
of
people,
calls as well.
like, people could think, like, they could have the courage to ring about somebody who assaulted them 5 years ago before they got divorced because they watched that show on Channel 4 that I was talking about.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
and it's very important that the media as well, like especially the news, because for example, my grandparents watch the news every night on BBC One. They don't have the internet.
Yeah.
Well, they do, but they don't use it in the same way
Yeah.
that we do.
Yeah.
Like it's important that the news and TV shows like the one on Channel 4 keep on speaking about the rise of mental health problems and the rise of domestic abuse and the rise of the calls to the police and how much they're struggling to do their job and care for people.
Definitely.
Because the more it gets out there, the more people will know, and the more next week the people who who are on that work Zoom call, even they don't go to work anymore,
Exactly.
who are on that Zoom call with people at the office might be like, oh, did you see on the news about the rise in domestic abuse? That might spark the conversation with a kid like me who was ashamed to talk about it. Do you know what I mean?
I think
Like-
there was an incident I had online, I think it was about a year ago actually, where I'm still to this day, I didn't form a decision on it just because I find, especially lately, I need time to get ready to process things, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So like sometimes there's things that happen or incidents that happen that are like maybe a moral dilemma where I physically, it might be sort of part to do with my depression where like I've got a lot going on mentally, but anyway, relevant. There was an incident a year ago where someone posted a picture of a turtle, right? It's
Right.
going to sound really stupid and you're going to laugh because it's fucking hilarious.
I mean,
Someone
yeah,
posted a picture of a turtle and it is relevant, I promise.
Okay.
And I commented on it saying, I think your dog has autism.
Okay.
And now I
Yeah.
thought that was hilarious. But then
yeah, I
had
can see why.
so many people that commented on it being like, you have no right, that's disrespectful. And I'm actually like, listen, not only do I have relatives that are very close to me that have autism, I'm autistic myself. So like
Yeah.
I feel like that's my thing. But then I had a conversation with a woman who was just like, I think that is degrading and joking about it because she had a son apparently that was autistic.
Right.
And I felt like the more people normalize it, because I feel like if you're afraid to talk about it, it doesn't get talked about. So part of me is just like, if I talk about it, if I make jokes about it, then the word autism itself, the mental health, depression, they're all taboo words. They're all like Voldemort. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
people don't want to talk about it. So the more I say it, then the more it'll be normalized. You know what I mean? People will feel comfortable talking about it, rather than like a fucking tricky subject they have to avoid because like that's just not healthy. It's not how people become informed about autism. It's not like not even about autism in general now, just phrases and diagnoses and big words that people are afraid of because of the connotations. And I think it's the connotations, not the word. But then again, I do completely understand. So for example, there are some slurs that people, so like the R word, for example, that for a long time, I remember, Ryan, you were saying about that, like, there are some
like,
people...
that's one that makes me recoil. Like I don't know why, but something about it triggers something in me that makes me feel a little bit ill.
Exactly. But I'm personally, like, I'm going to put my hands up and say, like, I threw that word around, like, my whole life I always have, like, up until very recently.
To be fair, I was the same when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And then I hit adult life, and I learned that word isn't a very nice word. Like, I didn't understand what it meant.
I think it's a lot like, you know, did you ever remember the time that you realised that your, like, parents or parent or your guardian was a person? Like, you realise that actually they're not just an adult figure, they've got their own emotions. Like, for example, like, well, the first time I saw my mum cry...
I'll say that actually, for me, that took a very, very long time, and I'm not entirely sure why.
Okay. I think it's down to the whole, whole term of using that. I'm just going to link it in just so it doesn't seem completely irrelevant. I think there comes a point in your maybe adult life, some people get it earlier, some people don't even get it till their 40s, and I've met them and they're barred. But they don't understand that there's other people other than them. I think that's what it comes down to, is you forget other people.
I definitely struggle with caring about other people as much as a lot of people. I know it sounds funny. It sounds like the normal like high school teenage thing of being emo and just I don't care about anybody. But I struggle to grasp the idea of other people and their emotions when I was growing up. Other people did not make it easy for me to try and connect with them because I was bullied a lot in high school, so that made it very hard to want to care in the first place. Um, and then and now like in my adult life, I've only just started to empathize with strangers, and it's not really adult strangers either. It's generally children and teenagers. Like, if you show me an adult getting brutally murdered in a movie, right? You make me watch the entirety of Saw. I wouldn't
Yeah.
give a shit about any single adult in that movie. But if you show a kid getting their toy stomped on or taken away, or they're crying or whatever, I will tear
Yeah.
up. I will tear up, and I will
Yeah.
feel really, really bad, and I'll feel really.
And
And
I think
I've
part
this
of
is new
that-
for me. This is new for me. This is like in the past 2 years or so that this has started happening, and before then, I didn't connect with anyone at all. And going back to what you said earlier about parents, I think I only really started to recognize their lives outside of mine when I no longer lived with either of them.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah,
because we had
same.
other things to talk
Like-
about outside of the house.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
with my grandparents, I grew up with them. They raised me as their own. Like, before I moved out at the age of 23, I think. But
Mm.
everybody does things at different paces. You don't
Yeah.
have to move out when
No,
you're 18.
exactly.
And like, I didn't really like. I didn't see them not as grandparents because they were constantly looking after the kids or
Yeah.
picking the kids up from school or helping me out. Like, I never saw them as friends or as husband and wife or
Yeah.
as like
No, definitely.
as any other relationship other than grandparents.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
now that I've moved out, like, obviously I don't see them very often. I haven't seen them for almost a year now.
Mhm.
But
Right.
like, I can see more that they have their own life outside of me.
Could you?
Mm.
Can I just throw out an argument here? I want to see what you guys think about it because it's just sort of flown into my head now.
Yeah, go
Do
on.
you think there is a correlation between people who are aware of, say if we're using the phrase of adults as people, right? Because obviously not everyone's with their parents. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Adults
yeah,
as
yeah.
people. Do you think I found a lot of the people? So, for example, like the town I'm in, there's a lot of people who grew up on council estates, come from quite troubled home, poor backgrounds. Do you
Yeah.
think that has a bearing on your perception of adults?
Oh,
for
fuck
kids,
yeah.
So kids
Yeah.
who grew up having to be head of the household, having to support their parents, having to get a job from a young age, they have to grow up quite quickly. And I think, obviously, you were saying about your grandparents and them being able to support you, and obviously that doesn't come against you at all. Do you know what I mean? I wish
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
everyone was lucky like that. But do you think that possibly you, obviously you said about the start of your childhood, but I think since then,
It's like, I think that I'm a middle ground because
Yeah.
I lived with my parents, well, my mum, until I was 13, and then she got very, very mentally ill and wasn't able to look after me.
Mm.
So I kind of brought myself up. Like, I cooked my own meals from the age of 12. I did my own washing from the age of 12. Like, I walked the dogs and looked after the animals by myself.
Yeah.
exactly.
So, in some aspects, I'm like,
Best of both worlds.
I did grow up very, very young, but in some aspects, I also still rely on my grandparents a lot. Like, because, for example, I wouldn't be able to access any mental health support without them. But without that, if I didn't have the lifeline of being able to access mental health support, for example, like, that's the thing that my grandparents are supporting me with at the moment, I don't know what I'd do without them. Like, there's certain things that I'm like, yes, I am fully independent with. I will do by myself, perfectly happy. But then there's some things I'm like, I couldn't cope without my grandparents. Like, it's stupid stuff. Like, if I spill blood on a bed sheet when I've cut
Yeah.
my finger or something and I don't know how to
Yeah.
get it out. I wouldn't be able to cope with that small situation
Yeah. Lemon
if
juice
it
and
wasn't
baking soda, by
for
the way.
my nana being on the end of the phone.
Yeah, no,
Mm.
exactly. I
And
think you can consider as well, you know, the whole idea, the whole joking idea of I walked 10 miles to school, that older generation where they
yeah,
were like,
Yeah.
I walked 10 miles to school, I had a job by the time I was breathing. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's like I think that we should aim to make children's lives easier than our own.
exactly,
Like if
exactly.
I ever have kids, I want them to grow up in a world where they never have to worry about whether they're going to be able to eat because there's no money in the house.
Yes,
And
and,
and
Mm.
and I don't like the whole when I was your age, I had things harder, or when I was your age,
Because it
I-
completely disregards the problem that this person is having. It doesn't matter that you've had a worse problem in your life. It's not a fucking competition. They're trying to tell you that they have an issue.
yeah,
it's like I don't understand the way that the older than us generation are. They seem to want to make children's lives miserable.
I see,
Mm.
I feel like it goes two ways. So, for example, I worked with a person who grew up quite well off. Her parents were together. They were all like, they were rich. She grew up with like horses and like all of this kind of stuff. And I think there's a level of empathy that people acquire when they've gone through stuff. And that's not to say I don't know a person.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I do to an extent, but like when I became homeless, I became homeless in September. I went into work and I was like, oh, bit of a bad mood. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't chuffed about it because it was about a week before my tenancy
Right.
ended, and I knew after that I
Yeah.
wouldn't have anywhere. I walked in. She was like, "Oh, what's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm actually going to be homeless in a week. And I'm not really. I'm kind of like don't really know what to do, but you know what? I'm going to roll with it. Do you know what I mean? Take the hits as they come." And she, full up, straight up, was just like, "No, you're not." I was like, "What?"
Like
And she couldn't perceive that I could struggle in a way that she couldn't fathom and not be freaked out and unmovable. Like she said, she was saying if she was in that situation, she would be completely devastated. She'd be distraught. She wouldn't know what to do. So for me to still go into work every day, for me to still be making plans and just doing what I can, she couldn't fathom that. And I think people who grow up with this whole silver spoon-esque, do you know what I mean? I'm not saying everyone
Yeah.
who grew up with money had a
Like-
great childhood, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it does give people a level of understanding. Like everything that I've been through in my life has made me more aware of people who are going through the same thing. Do you know what I mean?
exactly. I don't think I would care for people in the same way that I do if I wasn't brought up in the environment I was brought up in. Like I'm probably like I have always had a massive issue with empathy
Mm-hmm.
in that
Mm.
I feel too much.
Yeah.
Like the perfect example was that I watched an Ellen O'Neill video the other day.
Yeah.
And they don't often get to me. Like I enjoy true crime, but it was this one about this 16-year-old non-binary kid who was murdered and like brutally murdered.
Yeah.
And I was hysterical. And like
Mm.
that sort of thing, like I feel too much empathy for other people, especially my friends, and I will do anything to make them feel better. And that has made me quite emotionally immature, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because
but
say
go on.
if I can't make a friend happy, because I have mental health problems myself, I know that sometimes people can't make you happy.
No, it's just
Yeah.
not feasible.
And you
time.
just have to accept that. But I really struggle to gather that in my head, that
Yeah.
sometimes I can't do anything to cheer
Yeah.
somebody up. And sometimes that has a massive knock-on effect on my mental health, and that's really unhealthy.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you think, Ryan, as far as empathy in regards to like upbringing
I just
and
wanted
class?
I just wanted to say I have the opposite the opposite problem of Casper. This is
Okay.
something that me and Casper have discussed about in our relationship
Yeah.
before, because I get very jealous of how easily Casper Casper's talked about having empathy as a problem, and I can see why that can be an issue. Of having too much, but also I'm just jealous of the little things Casper can do, which is just being nice to strangers, that kind of thing. Like I I don't know how to describe it without sounding like an asshole, but
No,
like
just sound like an asshole, man.
but
There's no
but like just empathy for strangers. Like you can show me pictures of people dying or whatever, and I'll be like, that's horrific, but
Yeah.
I'm not. I
It
don't
doesn't.
feel anything from this.
Yeah. I
But
had someone.
in terms
That's
of me being raised right, because
Oh
I
yeah,
thought it
yeah,
was quite an interesting thing you said about that.
Mm.
Because I had both parents, they weren't together, but you know, I think that played a part. I got to see both of my parents. They tried their best to look after me and bring me up well. I didn't go without as a kid, really.
Yeah.
Like if I wanted something, generally I got it. Like we weren't rich. I didn't have everything I ever wanted,
Yeah.
but I had enough, and there were very few times where I got told, "Nah, mate, you can't have that.
Yeah.
We're too poor or whatever." You
Yeah.
know. And obviously, like, but being raised as when I was raised in primary school and everything, I was raised on home education. Like I went to primary school for a bit, then I was taken out, and then I was home educated because of my mum just hated the school system, and I can definitely see why.
Yeah.
But then I got to a level where my dad works all the time, and he had me at weekends, so he couldn't educate me, and my mum what I was learning was kind of beyond what she was capable of teaching me.
Oh yeah.
So it got to that point where they were both just like, you have to go to high school now. So I was I remember I often describe this as the last time I was ever really happy. That's not that's an over exaggeration, but it's kind
I
of true.
Yeah.
Like
No, I get you.
those days before high school was the last time I ever felt empathy in that way. I have felt it since, but in that way, like I gave a shit about the other people around me. I wanted to care, and I went into high school wanting to care, and they fucking beat it out of me
Yeah.
so bad, and it got to a point where I don't have it anymore, and I struggle to get in the first place.
Also, do you know what I mean?
And
Go on, Casper.
and I would the opposite end of that because again I was raised as female, which has a large, which probably has something to do with why I am the way I am and why I'm so in touch with my emotions.
Yeah, I think that can play a part. Yes.
I went to high school and I was picked on a lot. Most of it wasn't physical, but it was the bullying was still there.
Yeah,
definitely.
And it pushed me the other way. Like before I was bullied properly, I was at healthy level of caring for people.
Yeah.
But when the bullying started, it wasn't just me that was picked on. It was my friends and everybody that I cared about, because in high school, your high school friend groups are everything to you.
Definitely.
Like
I think,
all of my friends were bullied as well, and I saw that happening. And then I wanted so much to make it stop that I became over empathetic, and it's never really gone away.
Do you think, I know, Casper, you're probably more, I'm not really too knowledgeable about this, but is there any link between empathy and estrogen at all? Do you think that
probably there probably is, like
motherhood instinct
like
kind of situation?
like I know that I am referred to as the mum friend by a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because I am. Like, I take people under my wing and I look after them.
Yeah.
And I think I wouldn't have that instinct if I was raised as male.
Yeah.
Because I am quite often looked upon by my peers, because my peers at uni, a lot of them don't know that I'm trans.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just looked at as a bit strange, because men aren't raised in the same way that we were. I don't know about you.
This is what I'll say is, like, I don't necessarily link this is talking as someone who doesn't, who isn't a woman, and you know, estrogen is not as big a part of my biological makeup. So you know, take my words with a grain of salt here. But I was raised as a man, so I can speak for that part. And I think it's a very nature versus nurture kind of argument. I don't think my parents definitely tried to raise me to be an emotional human being, so the fault doesn't lie with them, but my peers, as I said, in high school and everything, that were very, you know, there is this this stigma, I suppose, with the emotional man. And there's the whole thing of like, boys don't cry, men don't cry, men are manly and strong and stable.
So you know, do you remember when Tom had some, like, he had, what, because of the medication he was on, his estrogen levels were like, they were a lot higher than the average, like the average males. Do you know what I mean? If you compare, so for example, compare my older brother from him. Growing up, I wasn't really close to them, but once all this stuff started with Tom, especially after that, he was a lot more. I found it a lot easier to connect with him emotionally. He was always the one I'd go to, and that's not saying that my older brother from him wasn't supportive, because he absolutely was, but it was a sort of emotional vulnerability. And I think I don't know if it was the estrogen, I don't know if it was just, I can never prove that it was anything else. I can't undo and relook, do you know what I mean? But I think I'm so glad this toxic masculinity, like, it's always it's
definitely it's coming down. It is coming down.
I love that.
Sorry, Catherine. Sorry, I just wanna say this before I forget. I don't want to talk too much about you guys and the issues you've had in your past, but I will say, I know you and Tom as siblings have been through a lot together. I've spoken to Tom about you and how he feels and how you grew up and everything. So I know that you two have a bond that not necessarily any of your other siblings will have. Like, obviously you've got a bond with your other siblings, but I feel with Tom, especially the way you guys interact and the way you guys talk to each other, I think that bond and that emotional vulnerability, as you said, is there anyway. From an outside perspective.
My older brother from him, he went through the same stuff we did. He went through the same. Me and Tom have a bond that is unbelievable. Like, so did me and my other brother. I love my family to bits, but Tom and I had a different relationship, despite the fact that my older brother from him, James, we had the same experiences, but we just never. He's a lot more reserved. He's a lot more masculine, I would say.
I have like stuff I can say here, but it's not really mine to say. I have spoken to Tom about this exact thing, and he has his own viewpoints on it, and I think it would be a very interesting discussion to have with Tom.
If you message after this, I'll just clear some stuff, because obviously there's some things I wanted to say as well on stream, but I don't want to. We'll have a discussion beforehand.
Yeah, I'm fine to carry on here as well, guys. But I feel like we should start wrapping up the podcast about an hour and a half. We've got about 12, 13, 15 minutes.
I can bring into one of the topics with what I'm about to speak about. With the toxic masculinity, it's very, very prominent in the transmasculine community. Like, I am a feminine trans guy. Look at me, I've got bright pink hair. I'm very in touch with my emotions, and I'm proud of that. I'm very proud of how comfortable within myself I am. And I am looked down upon by the majority of the transmasculine community. And I've spoken to multiple of my transmasc friends about this, and it's not just me that feels like this. But a lot of the transmasc community look down on those trans guys that are more in touch with their feminine side and are less ashamed of their feminine upbringing.
It's similar to the whole idea of the lipstick lesbian, isn't it? Like lesbians have this whole thing like, oh, you can't wear that lipstick, you can't be this way because that's how straight women are, and it's like, fuck off.
It's exactly the same. Like, a lot of trans, like, I have said to multiple people in multiple groups of friends that I don't feel comfortable in a trans support group because I'm not welcome there. Because I'm not your standard trans guy. I don't pass as cis. I don't want to pass as cis. Like, I'm very proud of the person I am. And I'm not saying that it's negative to not be proud of your trans identity, because I have many friends who are stealth and also very in touch with their emotions. It's not necessarily an emotion thing. But there is that toxic masculinity of men can't have pink hair, and men can't wear pink shirts, and men can't wear skinny jeans, is one that I've been told in a trans support group. Is
so
you
strange.
don't look male because you don't wear skinny jeans, and it's just so gross. And the trans community needs to stop gatekeeping itself, because we have the government who are gatekeeping our community currently by tightening the rule, tightening sexed bathrooms. And I know it's a serious topic, and we should probably end on a lighter topic, but it's something that if somebody within the disability groups I'm in hadn't shared to their Instagram story, I wouldn't know about. And I feel like everybody needs to know that they want to tighten the laws around sexed bathrooms, because people like myself won't be able to go to the toilet in public, which doesn't sound like a big thing.
That is a big thing, though. Like,
when I first came out as trans, I didn't go to bathrooms because men's bathrooms are terrifying. I don't know.
Sorry,
like
they are.
I don't really have a lot. So I've got people who are trans that I'm friends with, but I've never really, not out of choice, obviously, but like out of coincidence, I've not, like, could you like talk to me about your experience with bathrooms in particular? Because I know it's an argument I've had with a couple of people.
My experience with bathrooms, mostly they've been very positive, actually. Since starting T, I've been 4 years on T next week.
Okay, 4 years.
Yeah, but the first time I went into a toilet was, into a male toilet was single-handedly the most terrifying experience of my life. Because men are they will pick you up on it if they think that you're a woman.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, I really don't understand that. As a cis man, I don't understand that. I've never thought when I look at someone or whatever, I've never thought about going, oh, you look like this. I don't get that at all. That's so weird.
Yeah.
In the pub I was working at, I was doing the toilet checks for the men's as well, because we have 2 bars. There's the top bar as well that's where the toilets are kept, and I'd have to every hour go into the men's toilets, sort of spray down the cubicles, wipe down everything, especially during COVID as well. And there was this time, actually, a couple of times, one most prominent to me, there was an older geezer, and I say older geezer, like 40s, no older than 50, do you know what I mean? And he had so much to say about the fact that he didn't feel comfortable coming into the toilet, and it was his right to come into the toilet and not have a female in there. And I was just like, dude, like, who else is to clean up your skin stain? Do you know what I mean?
I think pubs and clubs and drinking venues are probably where I've had the least problems.
Okay.
Like, I was kicked out of a club in Gay Village on Trans Pride weekend with a group of my friends, but that bar has since been shut down for transphobia and, more importantly, racism. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the Gay Village isn't a safe place for trans people. I've said that publicly. If anybody wants to confront me on it, I'll have that conversation with them.
And I've always found that quite interesting, because like there's a lot of people, there's a lot of drag queens in Gay Village.
There is, and the drag queens you meet in Gay Village are the nicest people you will ever meet. The only times I ever had people standing up for me on nights out when I went to the male toilets, it was always a 6'2" drag queen in high heels.
Nice.
But in pubs, I once actually, me and my best friend, went to this pub every night for a long period of time, because Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't drink because neither of us drink. He's gluten intolerant. So, and we're both trans, to add to the story. Important part that I left out. We went to this pub every night, and we went to the male toilet every night. The landlady and landlord knew us as trans. They spoke to us, and she was like, if you ever have any problems, come to me and I'll kick them out.
Yeah.
And there was this old man, and he was like 60, 70.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit older, I don't know. And every time we walked past him to go to the toilet, because he'd sit right near the toilet to intimidate us, he would whisper under his breath, the T-slur. And you wouldn't expect that sort of thing to get to you. But after...
Yeah, you would.
But after a month or so of it, he was just whispering under his breath. He eventually would follow me into the toilet and stand outside the cubicle, to a point where I once stood on the toilet and texted one of my cis friends, like, you need to come and get me, I'm gonna get fucking attacked.
Yeah.
Like...
And I think that's one of the things that people bring up. They like to bring that up, don't they? That J.K. Rowling...
Like, they like to bring up the fact that they like to think... They like to turn the narrative onto the trans people being the predator.
Trans women, especially.
But if you give me a trans person who hasn't felt like they're going to get beaten up in a toilet, I will give you 100 quid. Because literally every trans person I know has a story like mine, because it's common. Like,
I think it's the minority though. But if people treated, I was saying this actually. I was saying if people treated like these people who are transphobic, who are going under the premise of I want to keep my daughters safe, right? If we treated actual predators with the same kind of malice, and if we treated, especially, I want to talk about like religion in regards to how people approach trans people using bathrooms, right? Because if we took the minority of Christian people, for example, and how shitty they've been, do you know what I mean? Like excluding people from churches, attacking people, going out and like literally hunting people. They're the minority. I know my parents are religious; they're lovely people, but they're the minority. And if we treat I've got some friends as the minority, but they're treated as the majority. Sorry.
I've got some friends who are trans and are religious and go to church every single week. And their church, their communion knows that they're trans, and their church support them. Yeah. Like, the majority of religious people are not, like, the most vocal. It's the same with the lesbians being transphobic and think that trans men are... lost lesbians. I've been referred to as a lost lesbian many times.
Oh,
it was mainly on Twitter.
I mean, at least they got the alliteration in there. It sounds like a really cool punk rock
mainly
band.
On Twitter. Like, it was my bio for a while. Because, like, these TERFs are so vocal about, like, the reason the government have put out this call for evidence. You can email them and tell them that there's no need to tighten the laws because trans people are attacked every day in bathrooms. Like, the reason they have put this call out is because the TERFs, the J.K. Rowlings of the world, think that trans people have taken their women's spaces and turned the women's toilets into disabled toilets. Now, another argument that needs to be brought into this is disabled people. Do disabled people not deserve to go to the toilet as well, TERFs?
Exactly.
Like, would these TERFs say to a person in a wheelchair that they don't deserve to be able to access the facilities they need in public because their space as women is more important to them?
No, I had some people. So, for example, the disabled toilet, but the pub I worked at, the disabled toilet, right, was on the ground floor. We had one disabled toilet. It was right by the fire exit. And every single day, there were people that come in every day without fail who had, like, literally told me the only reason they use it is because they couldn't be bothered to use the stairs.
Yeah.
Now, if we treated that, there are more, like, cis, white like men as well as female, to be fair, that are completely able, that disregard trans people using the bathroom they feel more comfortable in, but are more than happy to have a guy in a wheelchair wait for them because they can't be bothered to walk up the stairs. Do you know what I mean?
It's like
it's a double standard, really.
it's a deeper conversation than just same-sex toilets, which, in my opinion, need to be abolished anyway. Because I won't ever feel safe in a male toilet, and that's not because I don't pass, because I do. I am 100% cis-passing, and I am very, very aware of my male privilege because of that. But I won't ever feel safe in a male toilet because of the experiences I've had being dragged out of toilets and being followed into toilets, etc. Those sorts of things kind of ruin that experience for you, and I know a lot of people like don't let those experiences ruin it for you. But every time I go into a single-sex toilet, I'm like, what if that happens again? Like, and if you were to make more gender-neutral toilets, which are just more accessible for everybody.
Well, this is the thing, is that it's so normal for example, when you go to a pub or a restaurant with kids. For example, I used to go, like, my brothers used to come in with my mum to the toilet.
Like,
when there wasn't
it's so normal to go
into
the bathroom with...
I do kind of see. So, for example, when all the J.K. Rowling stuff came out, and she was like, it's taking experiences away from women. On one hand, I'm sort of like, yes, I don't agree with that at all. Don't get me wrong. Like, but at the time, I was like, to be fair, I did martial arts for years and years and years. I'm a pretty confident person. Like, I can handle myself. Do you know what I mean? But I still can't walk down the like pitch black path down the back of town by myself. Do you know what I mean? And I know
exactly. I'm the same, and I'm a man now.
Exactly. Like, but people who transition, I do get that they might not have had that, but that doesn't change the fact that now they're getting something arguably worse. Do you know what I mean? Because people always go to protect women and children, look after them. Like, all my brothers escort me if I'm leaving my mate's house and I have to walk home every single time without fail, knowing that I'm the big bad bitch that I am. They still have to walk me home, and I think.
And their argument is always think of the children.
Exactly, we need to look after trans people.
But we don't. And these TERFs' argument is always look after the children, but we don't look after the trans children, who are arguably one of the most vulnerable parts of the LGBT community. Like,
100%.
I think as well, just sort of pushing on, like, just a little, it's still relevant, but looking at, I saw something that really quite resonated with me. About, like, gender dysphoria and, like, body dysphoria, where it was saying you don't have to have gender dysphoria and have a world of issues around it just to be I guess outside of the norm. So I've sort of feels like my like gender identity, like I've always been like a feminine. That's a lie. I've always felt like a woman. Do you know what I mean? Like, I always identified as a woman, and it's only in the last sort of 5 or 6 years I didn't think about it actively. It wasn't something that was at the forefront of my mind, so I didn't feel like I had a right to explore that. Do you know what I mean? Because it wasn't something I struggled with, that I felt that I wasn't able to sort of delve into that. And I saw something that was saying that, like, it's still valid. Do you know what I mean? Like, I felt so much better knowing that there were people out there that would see my sort of identity as valid, and I'm still working on it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's at the back of my head, but it's still there. And I think we need to support people. We need to stop the stigma, because then people can sort of have their space. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. We need to work on the issues within the LGBT as well. Like, the gay community is very, very, very transphobic, and I quite often say to people that before I wouldn't have felt safe with a cis male partner, because I wouldn't, because you're kind of taught as a trans person to be more careful. And like, we need to tackle the stigma inside of our community, as well as the J.K. Rowlings of the world. And a good way to start with that is to just post about it on social media, even if your friends say that they're sick of you posting all of your social justice bullshit.
Oh,
Like,
I had that.
like my friends quite often say to me about trans stuff. Like, they quite often say that I need to give it a break. But I don't get a break. My entire identity is being trans, and well, not my entire identity, but a lot of my identity is being trans, and my identity is being attacked.
Exactly. I think
like you can't be quiet about those issues,
no, definitely. I think,
because they are attacking who I am as a person.
I think last year, it's with the whole, like, after George Floyd and all that kind of stuff, the whole big rise of the, like, Black Lives Matter movement, I lost family over that. I got so heavily
it was
involved,
very
really
divisive. I haven't lost family, but me and my mother cannot agree on the Black Lives Matter movement, because I'm all for it, and she's got opinions about it that I cannot agree with, and it's just very...
But more specifically, I fell out with my with these relatives. There was like 3 or 4 of them that I now don't speak to, that I was so close with. Do you know what I mean? That were posting stuff about Blue Lives Matter. And
that's ridiculous.
I was just like, you can take off a blue suit. Police officers, that's not who you are. You're not defined by being a police officer. And if you are, that's a sad life. Like, you can't take off. You can't stop being trans. It doesn't stop affecting every single day of your life. It doesn't necessarily have to define who you are at all. Like, obviously you're more than trans, but at the end of the day, it is an aspect of yourself that you've had to live through. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, and it's for that reason that I will always use whatever little platforms I have to speak for the people who can't necessarily...
You though, dude. Like, people who...
Like, I will always speak for the people who might not necessarily feel safe speaking themselves, because I am privileged as a cis-passing white trans guy that I can do that, and that's why we all need to stick up for each other. We all need to stick up for each other, and we all need to write to our MPs about this bathroom tightening law and how it's ridiculous and shouldn't be done. I'm doing a thumbs up to the camera.
Anyone who sends me a screenshot of them having signed that petition gets a booty pic, and I'm going to say that right now. I was going to say as well, I think having that experience makes you more compassionate, and I think that's why people who are trans, who are gay or queer or any of that, need to speak. Because, for example, like, if my little sister now came to me and she was just like, I think I like chicks, I'd be like, same. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I grew up, I didn't really feel like I had anyone. I think the first person I really came out to was my auntie, and that was like 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been sort of questioning this for like way before that. But I think, had I been given an opportunity to see that platform, but more casually, do you know what I mean? It was always something, it was always that like stigma. So I'd Google girls kissing and then delete my entire computer history, all the factory reset. Do you know what I mean? That's shame and that's stigma. And I think these generations now, I'm so glad that people are addressing toxic masculinity, transphobia, racism, homophobia still. I'm so glad that's being tackled. It gives me so much faith. You know what? If this generation coming up spends their entire lives in like those mobile units from Wally, at least I'd have some faith that they're not going to be bullying someone for wearing a pink skirt. Do you know what I mean? Like, at least we've got that on a more positive note.
I think when our generation, because we are all the same generation, gets into power and gets into politics, the world will be a much happier place.
I think,
and that gives me so much hope for the LGBT youth, like the teenagers and the kids that are growing up now, having their rights actively taken away from them, that when our generation gets into power, LGBT youth and queer youth will have life a lot easier for them.
We're not going to let that shit slide. Right,
Sorry, because there is a lot more we can say here, but I do want to wrap it up because because
am
I'm going to make an
hungry.
archive out of this, and I'm hungry.
I'm hungry and I want a drink.
People, our generation getting into power, though, I have got my fingers crossed for AOC becoming president of the United States next time.
I am
next election.
desperately trying not to think about America because
AOC.
when I think about it, it gives me a headache.
AOC, she will be 35 by the time the next election comes around, I think. So she can run. She is quite incredible. She's actually tried to connect with people. She is of our generation, and I think she would make a great candidate for first female president from what I've seen so far. But there's so much we could talk about here. I think we should save it for the next one.
Yeah,
Wednesday.
I think we should save it for the next one on the note that our generation is amazing, and the fact that we don't kick off about Harry Styles wearing a dress
exactly
is proof that we are so accepting and we're just so lovely, and I'm so thankful for the internet because I get to see Harry Styles in a dress.
And I just
and
like
everything
to...
he stands for, obviously, not just the man himself.
And I'd just like to say, I'd just like to dedicate this podcast to Captain Tom, who sadly died. Was it yesterday?
Yeah.
Which I'd just like to say, we're talking about our generation doing great things and such. What a great man. I think it's horrific the fact that a 100-year-old man had to walk around his garden, had to do this in order to raise money for the NHS when our government should have done this themselves. But what a beautiful, lovely man, and I think he will be sorely missed by the world. We need more people like him.
And I think that there is a clap for him, but I saw that a musician that I follow tweeted that he will clap when the government fund the NHS because that is when. I agree. I don't feel like I will clap until the government have done more than just clap.
I'll clap Beyonce's cheek.
Basically, we will clap.
Yeah.
We will clap.
So I think that's a nice. It's a bit of a bittersweet note to end it on, but we will end on clapping Beyonce's cheeks. I think I like that.
Yes.
And
Harry Styles in a dress, of course.
And Harry Styles in a dress.
So
thank you, Millie, for joining us. Hopefully, I'm hoping you plan to stick around as host.
I hope so as well.
Because it is a perpetual invitation. Obviously, with work and stuff in the future, but we can shift the time around. So in future, it could always be 4:00, 3:00 on Wednesday or whatever. But yes, Millie should be joining us as host next Wednesday, and for the foreseeable future at least. Anyway,
I just want to shout out 5 people. I think it's the same 5 people that were watching when I first started. They're still here, so...
Fantastic. So yes, well, if they would like to come and see this podcast again, we will be broadcasting at 5 p.m. next Wednesday.
And next time, I will change my stream so it doesn't still have the same bio from when we played Scribbly Dog. On that note, goodbye.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.